Julie Kelly joins us. She's breaking this news today. She's the author of the Declassified by Julie Kelly Substack and the book January 6th, How Democrats Used the Capitol Protest to Launch a War on Terror Against the Political Right. Julie, thank you for your time, as always.
Oh, always. Thanks for having me on, Vince.
Julie, what is happening here? You have documents unsealed today in court proceedings. What do they reveal?
Yeah, so this is happening fast and furious. There were a bunch of unsealed motions docketed today in the classified documents case in Southern Florida. As you know, and we've talked about Judge Aileen Cannon on this transparency and accountability crusade. God bless her. Thank you for this, Judge Cannon. So really important motions docketed today by Donald Trump. What the motion was is to suppress the evidence from the Maralago raid, calling it unlawful, that the agents misled the court as to the necessity for the raid. But then looking through the exhibits, there is this shocking operations order that the FBI law enforcement prepared on August 3rd of 2022. The raid was on the 8th. And part of that order is an explanation of the use of deadly force and what agents must abide by if they're confronted with a situation where deadly force would be necessary. Just completely shocking, but there are other details too that underscore, how really not just unprecedented, but how dangerous this raid really was. And parts of it talking about how agents should conduct themselves if Donald Trump appeared at Maralago. Of course, he was at his home in Bedminster, summer home in New Jersey. But if he did show up or there was a confrontation or resistance with Secret Service agents, then advising the agents on the ground how to respond. Just really stunning, mind-blowing revelations that you just can't believe this is happening in America.
I mean, you would think that, in the event that federal law enforcement's going to a location like Mar-a-Lago, that they would ahead of time talk to Secret Service and deconflict anything like this. But instead, they apparently wanted to surprise Secret Service. So they saw themselves at odds with the Secret Service here?
Well, there's some dispute in this particular document, Vince, that they were in correspondence with the Secret Service prior to this raid, but then talks about, how to handle if there was resistance by the Secret Service. So not really sure how they plotted that out. But even aside from that, more unusual aspects of this, you had one of DOJ's top officials with counterintelligence unit who participated in this raid. You had the assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida. Prosecutors don't show up at raids. They're not investigators. They're prosecutors. Then you had 4 agents out of the Washington FBI field office and an official from the FBI headquarters. There was nothing normal about this raid. And then there's more documentation, aside from the use of deadly force, that agents were armed. They brought bolt cutters. They talked about picking the locks at Maralago guest rooms if staff did not turn over keys. What possibly would they need to look at Maralago guest rooms for? They ransacked Melania's room. They took pictures. They ransacked Barron's room. This was not, we need national security files, to keep the country safe. This just again underscores what an egregious, corrupt, dirty investigation this has been since the very beginning. And again, thank you, Judge Cannon, for allowing the American people to see all of this material.
Yeah, this is really stunning. Now, if I'm anticipating an FBI reaction to this, to the extent that we'll get one at all, I assume they're going to say something, this is standard practice. Being prepared for an armed conflict is standard practice. This is over the top. This is the former president of the United States. You were prepared for a shootout with the Secret Service to go and raid Mar-a-Lago? This is insanity.
Yeah, I've already seen a few former FBI agents, Vince, people who I thought were, skeptical of the FBI saying, no, this is standard operating procedure. There's always an explanation or a form related to the use of deadly force. No, this is not normal. You don't storm in Mar-a-Lago when the president, his lawyer, and his team have been cooperating with the DOJ and FBI and the archives for more than a year and a half at that point. I mean, Donald Trump let Jay Bratt, the head of counterintelligence DOJ, and 3 FBI agents voluntarily allow them into Mar-a-Lago in June of 2022. There was no reason for an armed raid with dozens of agents for 9 hours ransacking the former president's home that could have resulted, now we know, in something that truly that could have been fatal, and who knows? So, your imagination can run a little bit wild here with the different scenarios, but the bottom line is none of this had to happen. None of it should have happened. Attorney General Merrick Garland is the one responsible for this. He bragged how he personally signed up on this raid,
Yes,
and the various elements of it that we're learning about now.
Yes, and you don't do that as the Attorney General of the United States without the blessing of the White House. Can you talk about the political involvement of Joe Biden and the White House counsel's office throughout all of this? They keep on suggesting that there is no political interference here, but my understanding throughout all of this is Biden and the White House counsel's office was very much involved in waiving Donald Trump's executive privilege rights and helping usher along this raid on Mar-a-Lago.
Right. So Joe Biden took the extraordinary step, this has never happened in U.S. history, of denying privilege claims of his predecessor. No president has ever done that to his predecessor before. Joe Biden did it a number of times, beginning with denying Trump's executive privilege claims to keep presidential files from the J6 committee.
Right.
That kind of started it. But the other revelations we're getting out of the unsealing and unredacting of these documents in southern Florida is evidence of close collusion between the National Archives, the Department of Justice, and to your point, Joe Biden's White House counsel. These are his top attorneys. They work in the West Wing. It's not like they're scuttled somewhere else in a law firm building in downtown Washington. They are the president's closest legal advisors. So the idea that now we have evidence of phone calls, of emails, of meetings between archive officials and Jonathan Sue, Biden's deputy counsel at the time, Dana Remus, who was his general counsel at the time. And this is what Donald Trump, again, in this filing today, and there's so much happening. If people can check out Julie_Kelly too on Twitter and X, where I've been posting this. Donald Trump said the day of Joe Biden's inauguration, the archivist, David Ferrero, who's an Obama appointee, started working right away with another longtime White House employee, probably with the Records Management Office, to concoct and manufacture some sort of documents crime or case against Donald Trump. That was the filing, another revelation today in one of these motions.
It's just remarkable. So where does that leave the actual court proceeding? Judge Eileen Cannon has expressed the proper skepticism of the Biden administration's case here. And I know there's a bunch of pretrial motions involved. Where is this headed?
Well, it's headed, as I've explained. Judge Cannon is basically starting tomorrow, and I will be in the Florida courthouse tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, she's basically turning the tables on Jack Smith and DOJ and putting them on a trial of sorts. So tomorrow will be a public hearing on Walt Nauta, who is Trump's longtime aide and a co-defendant here, his motion to dismiss for vindictive and selective prosecution. That should produce some fireworks. Mm-hmm. And then in the afternoon, there'll be another hearing on all of the defense motions, including Donald Trump's motion to dismiss the indictment, based on many of the falsehoods and vagueness of that indictment. And that indictment, I will tell you, Judge Cannon also is not a fan of. She often kind of makes derisive comments about how it's a speaking indictment. And, prosecutor, lawyer, you went on and on and on in your indictment about this. So I'm really interested to see how this will all unfold, and she will have more hearings next month related to the collusion with the Biden White House. So
how much will Robert Hur's report turning down charges for Joe Biden after he stole classified documents as both a United States Senator and a vice president, how much will that report play into Judge Cannon's thinking, especially as it relates to selective prosecution?
Well, I was at the courthouse 2 days after Robert Hur testified to Congress about why he declined to bring charges, but then, of course, exposed all the evidence related to what Joe Biden did, in many instances worse than Donald Trump. She many times brought up the Hur report and his testimony, asking Jack Smith's chief counsel, Jay Bratt, is why is this the first time that the government is bringing charges for such conduct? No other president or vice president has ever been charged. Why is this case different? So she was really hinting that she will very strongly consider selective prosecution motions to dismiss, but she has a lot of, part of me, Vince, thinks she wants to continue with this because it's the only way to make public the dirtiness, the corruption, the sloppiness, the vindictiveness, and now really the danger of this investigation and prosecution from the start.
Yeah, and the thing has been so brazen. I mean, just the revelations in the last few weeks that you and I have talked about, where the FBI has mishandled the evidence such that they've actually jumbled up the paperwork that they retrieved from Mar-a-Lago, thus disturbing the evidence, not having it retained in the way that it was found. Additionally, the revelation that they brought these props with them, these so-called classified cover sheets, and then spread them out on the floor, took photos of them, disseminated them to the public as if that's how they found these documents at Mar-a-Lago, when in fact the FBI brought the very props that were seen in the photographs.
Exactly right. I wrote about, I know we talked about this too. That's on my Substack if people want to check that out. But also the confession by Jack Smith that, to your point, evidence is not in the same order and sequence as it was after the raid. The big issue there, though, is that Jay Bratt, Jack Smith's prosecutor, told Judge Cannon last month in a hearing, again, I was there and heard it, she directly asked, because of course she knows all of this, right? But she wants the government on the record about their lies. She specifically asked Jay Bratt, is all the evidence in the same original form that it was after the raid? And he said, oh, yes, it is, with the exception of classified papers were taken out, and we put a cover sheet as a placeholder in that box. That's not what happened. And Jack Smith had to come back and tell Judge Cannon and everyone else that that's not true, that there are hundreds of papers in between some of these files, the sequence that the FBI investigators gave the defense. In some cases, Vince, Jack Smith further said the placeholder that they use for a classified document, they can't match up that sheet with the actual classified document that they took out of the box. So this case is imploding right in Jack Smith's face. But now the dirty fingerprints, again, of Merrick Garland, Christopher Wray, Stephen D'Antuono, who headed up the Washington field office and really oversaw the elements of this raid. For Americans now to sit here and think that armed FBI agents had authority and guidance as to how to use deadly force at Mar-a-Lago, it's just mind-blowing stuff.
It's so over the top and so tyrannical. Finally, Julie Kelly, when you're sitting in that courtroom and you're watching these proceedings, do you ever get angry glances from Jack Smith's team? They ever look over and they go, there's that dastardly Julie Kelly covering all of our behavior again?
Well, I'll tell you what, I usually stay in the media overflow room because you can really see and hear everything. I think I get a few dirty looks from reporters, but I will say most of them are very pleasant and fine. But, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to confront Jack Smith or Jay Bratt and, give them my famous stink eye, Vince.
Yeah.
Hopefully the time will come.
That time will present itself. I'm certain. All right. As always, Julie Kelly doing such excellent work and sharing this important breaking news today. Julie, good to talk to you. Thank you so much.